Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, we have a very special guest, and his name is Adam Toporek. Adam is an internationally recognized customer service expert, keynote speaker, and workshop leader. He is the author of Be Your Customer's Hero, Real-World Tips and Techniques for the Service Frontlines, as well as the founder of the popular Customers That Stick blog. When he's not speaking or delivering high-energy customer service keynotes or workshops, he can be found co-hosting the Crack the Customer Code podcast and writing extensively on customer experience. Adam has an MBA and a certificate in customer experience. He is also a Net Promoter Certified Associate. So, without further delay, welcome, Adam.
Thank you, Yannick. So happy to be here.
Awesome. So, I'm taking a new approach. This is the first time I'm doing this on this episode, so bear with me.
No worries.
We want to find out from you, what is your zodiac sign?
Oh, gosh. Wait, I do know. It's Sagittarius.
Awesome. So that means you're either born in the late part of November or the early part of December, correct?
Very true. You know what? This is a question I have not been asked, and I've done a lot of podcasts. So, all right, points for originality.
Yes, it's a unique approach that we're engaging in. So, one unique fact about a Sagittarius that I personally know is that they are extremely outgoing and they're very people oriented and very sociable. Would you say those are true characteristics of your personality?
I'd like to think so. I don't know much about the characteristics of a Sagittarius. I'll rely on you for that. But those are definitely the characteristics of somebody who's good at customer experience and customer service.
Awesome. So just for our listeners, you want to share your birthday too? That would be kind of awesome too.
Yeah, I will give you it's the early part of December.
All right. Okay, fair enough. All right. So thanks, Adam. So as we move into the podcast questioning now, I just wanted you to share with us a little bit about your journey. How did you end up in customer experience? A little bit about your history and, why you are where you are today.
Oh, absolutely. I am actually a third-generation entrepreneur, so business is in my blood. My grandfather owned a Main Street shoe store. My father started a wholesale business in the back of my mom's retail children's clothing store. So I grew up around business. I grew up, doing sale tags and all these things that you did back in the day. I've got 2 business degrees, so it's always been a part of who I am. And as I've opened my own businesses and went further along in my career, had my own retail business, got involved in franchising, one of the things I found was the part of the customer, the part of the business, when you're in your own business, you're the chief operating officer, you're the chief marketing officer, you're the chief plumbing officer, right? You're everything. But the part I always gravitated towards was that customer experience and that customer interaction. And the more I was in business and interacting with my own customers, I realized how important that idea of customer experience was. So as over time, I started talking about it and then writing about it publicly and on the blog. And this was many, many years ago. And it sort of developed into, developed the following, developed into a book, into speaking and keynotes and all that kind of stuff. But what I really find fascinating is that the journey that led me there comes from a real world lens. It comes from having to be face to face with customers and having to work with employees that are face to face with customers and seeing the challenges and seeing the struggles they had to deliver good customer experiences even when they wanted to.
Okay. So in terms of how you feel about customer experience currently, in terms of on a global level, based on the fact that you've been in the business for quite some time now, do you think there's been any improvement or do you think it's getting worse?
It's funny. I joked with one of my colleagues the other day, like, should we all just go home? There's so much bad customer service. We've been talking about this for so many years, and so many other great people have been talking about it for so many years, and there is so much bad service. I think expectations has changed if you want to talk more globally. I think expectations are different than they used to be. I think customers understand what good customer service is supposed to look like. I also think they sometimes have unrealistic expectations based on sort of these, viral stories of customer service, and the customer is always right, and all these types of things that have gone around. But what I would say about it is this. If you want to really pinpoint the one thing to think about in customer experience nowadays, is that it is the biggest source of competitive advantage for almost any organization in today's times. If you're not competing on experience and you are in a competitive industry, you are in trouble.
Wow. And then what if you have business owners who don't really think focusing on customer experience, specifically developing their team members, helping them to see the vision, to translate the experiences that they deliver to the customers on a face-to-face basis or even over the phone or social media is so important. They don't get it. How do you translate that to them?
You start with the numbers. I mean, you start with basically there's so many statistics out there that tend to open eyes. Now, if you can use an organization's own numbers, that is helpful. If you can use their survey data or their ranking or their NPS, that's great. But if not, especially for small business owners that may not have that, I mean, here's one statistic. 85% of customers are willing to pay more for a superior customer experience. Retention equals profit. I've personally found 3 different studies that show acquiring a new customer is anywhere from 5 to 10 times more expensive than retaining an existing one. Yet most people put their energy and time into marketing as opposed to retention and customer experience efforts. Next, customer experience also affects morale. It also affects how their culture and their employees feel. Well, culture doesn't feel, but how their employees feel and how everybody basically interacts. So customer experience permeates the entire organization. But I think you've got to start with the numbers and start with the economic argument, because especially for people in the C-suite or people that are owners or higher up in the organization, they tend to be run by numbers. And one of the great ones, and I just wrote a blog post called The Greatest Customer Service Statistic in the World, because we all use this all the time, but it answers your question perfectly. And it's that old Bain study that they surveyed a bunch of executives and 80% thought they gave great customer experiences. And then they surveyed the actual customers and 8% said they get it. And you can use that statistic. The reason I called it the greatest statistic in the world is because you can use that statistic to go, look, your customer experience probably isn't as good as you think it is. And here's why it's important that you change it.
Mm-hmm. True. I was reading an article this morning on Twitter, and it was a study that was done by New Voice Media, and apparently 62 billion per year is being lost because of poor customer service. Not million, but billion.
Ooh, well, that's a big number, right? I mean, and what's your portion of that? That would be the next question you ask an executive, to your point.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so in terms of developing that culture of service, that mindset where people are thinking, breathing, everything that they're doing is in alignment with in the mind of the customer or with the customer in mind. Because a lot of times processes are put in place, procedures are put in place, new products are brought out, but they're brought out on the basis that they think the customer is going to purchase it or engage with it, but they're not actually doing any testing to identify if this is something that the customer actually wants. How do you get people to that mindset? I know you said numbers, but let's say this person is not driven by numbers.
Well, if you're talking about organizational leaders,
more the employees.
The employees. That's a whole different ball of wax. Yeah, I was talking about leadership before. So with the employees, I think one of the things is you've got to walk the talk as a leader. So I'm going to go back to leadership first before I address the employees, because if you don't have a customer service centric culture, if you're not leading from the top, if what they see from you is that customers are numbers and customers aren't people, then they're not going to treat them like people. So there's nothing you can do for employees that you don't first start doing yourself. Now, assuming that's in place, I think with employees, you've got to make people understand, or help people understand, I should say, that they're dealing with human beings and that what they do matters. I have a chapter in Be Your Customer's Hero. It's called Everybody's Rushed, Everybody's Stressed. Because nowadays, everybody is. It doesn't matter if they don't have a job, do have a job, don't have kids, do have kids. They are rushed, stressed. Nobody has enough time. And those are our customers, and they don't want to be hassled. They want to have easy experiences. And a lot of times, I came from retail, so you talk to, and it's like, oh, it's just another dumb retail job, and this doesn't mean anything, and it doesn't matter. And I think one of the things is to have a purpose and a mission, and to make them understand that that purpose and mission centers around making people's days better. Whether you're selling T-shirts, whether you're selling medicine, whether you're selling online software, and whatever the services are around that, you're making a difference in people's lives. You're impacting people's lives. And when you help them connect to the human factor, the customer persona, some of that stuff we use in journey mapping. But if you help people understand the human on the other side of the phone or desk or email, and that's one of the first steps to getting them to have a customer-centric attitude and to act on it.
Awesome. All right. So we spoke about getting to the human side of the customer experience. Have you found sometimes that empathy a lot of times is lacking in terms of the organization's connection with their customers? And do you think that's something that's maybe driven from a psychological level in terms of how the people were grown up and their interactions that they've had, so they're not able to connect on that level when the customer is venting about something that they consider to be of great grievance, but the team member that they're dealing with is not seeing that same connectivity?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of factors at work. You mentioned organizational one and upbringing. But one of the things I often teach is that we are not biologically designed to be good at customer service. Okay, that was one of the reasons I focus on training and believe training is so important. Because here's the deal, we have all of these things that are called cognitive biases. One of them is negativity bias. So as human beings, we tend to look for negative information over positive information. We tend to give more weight and power to negative information instead of positive information. And that makes sense. The brain's job is to keep us alive, right? Mm-hmm. And this is why I don't know what the nightly news in Jamaica is like, but here in the States, it's always like your toaster is going to kill you, news at 11, right?
It's true. It's bad.
Right, but that's negativity bias because they know you're going to tune into that more than you're going to tune into, oh, there's a new toaster that actually plays the Star Spangled Banner. Sorry, that's an American reference. But yeah, I mean, so we have this negativity bias, and other things we have are defense mechanisms. So it is not natural as a human. We have fight or flight. When somebody yells at us and screams at us, it is not natural for us to go, well, thank you for telling me that, sir. How can I help you better? Right? That's not a natural reaction. You have to train yourself to depersonalize. You have to train yourself to look at the other person's perspective, not what they're saying about you, not how you're feeling. So when you talk about empathy, it's easy to empathize with somebody who is, let's say, not being negative or not sort of attacking you or attacking your organization. I think that's easier, and it just comes from caring. And anybody that's sort of built for caring or has been trained that the customer is important can find that empathy. It is still a trainable skill, and it is still something you need to filter for because not every person should be in a customer-facing role. There are some people that simply just should not have customer-facing jobs. But assuming you have the right team, you have the right people on the bus, you can train empathy for sort of easy situations, but then you've got to really train for them to not only empathize, but to depersonalize and to be able to be calm when the storm is coming, mm-hmm. and the communication skills and the techniques that you need to help sort of take that situation and move it down the road to a positive resolution.
All right. So I'm looking at some of the things that you talk about in your book, right? And just for those who didn't hear us at the beginning of the episode, Adam's book is called Be Your Customer's Hero, Real World Tips and Techniques. So in the book, you speak about 7 service triggers. Could you share a little bit about that for us and explain to us what that means?
I would love to, because these service triggers are like everybody's favorite thing. I swear from the book. When I do training, people love the service triggers. And what's really interesting about them is they are a preventative tool. And what I mean by that is, when we talk about customer service, if you look at what people search on Google, everybody wants to solve the problem they already have. How do I deal with a difficult customer? How do I do this? The service triggers are designed to create fewer of those problems, to have fewer problems to deal with. So the idea of the triggers is based on exactly what we were talking about before. It's based on our psychological mechanism, our psychological makeup. And we all have those triggers, right? And it could have been, when you were, a song comes on the radio and you start to feel emotional and you look back and you go, oh, wow, that was a song my grandmother used to sing to me when I was little. Mm-hmm. Or, when you were in college or when you were out on your own and you lived in an apartment and there was a noisy neighbor above you and it was just driving you crazy all the time. And then, 10, 15 years later, you're in a hotel and there's somebody noisy above you and you just find yourself getting like really mad because that's a trigger for you. And we all have these personal triggers, whether they be positive or negative. And what I've found is there are certain triggers throughout the population that are service triggers, that are hot buttons for people in customer service situations where they tend to get really upset. So what I did was I identified 7 of those, and not everybody has them equally and not everybody has them. But when you're looking at it at an organizational level, what we do is try to approach it by, okay, how can we prevent these triggers from being pulled? So just to give you an example, the first 2 triggers are being ignored and being abandoned.
Oh, right? Gosh. Those are bad.
Right. Because everybody, as soon as I say those, everybody's like, oh, my gosh. I've done that. I've had that happen because you've walked into a restaurant and just watched the hostess walk back and forth and not even make eye contact, right?
Uh-huh. So many times. And you say to yourself, I thought I just came to your business to spend my hard-earned money.
Exactly. And then being abandoned. I can't handle that for you, so I'm going to call, my manager will call you back tomorrow. What happens tomorrow? Nobody calls. What happens when you call back? Nobody calls. You've been abandoned or you've been left on hold for 30 minutes. Yeah. So these are triggers, because what happens, if that happens at a restaurant once and it's your favorite restaurant, okay, bad night, new hostess, I'll give them a break. I'm a little upset, but whatever. But now it's a trigger probably, because if you go in a second time and the hostess ignores you, you're not going to wait for 3 minutes. You're going to wait for 30 seconds this time. And what happens is we all have these triggers that we carry from organization to organization. Because once you've been put through phone tree hell, okay, what we call, which is number 5, being shuffled. Once you've been sent around from department to department and wasted hours trying to get an answer to your question, well, you can get pretty quick on the trigger to be resistant to when that starts happening. So have you ever experienced this in your customer service life or experience? You get an employee or you get a customer, and they're going, okay, I've got to send you to another department, or I've got to have my manager call you. And they go, well, wait a minute. What's the manager's name? What time are they going to call me? Who do I call if I don't hear from them? And they start going through this whole list of things, right? And I've done that myself. Well, that's because it's a trigger. They know they've been burned before. They know they've been shuffled, they've been abandoned, and now it's a trigger for them. So what we do is we look at the customer journey. We look at each touch point in the journey, particularly the major ones, and say, okay, how could a customer feel ignored here? Are they not greeted in time? Is the phone not picked up fast enough? How could a customer feel abandoned? And when you go through all 7 service triggers, if you can prevent these 7, you can revolutionize your customer experience just starting there.
Wow. I think the ignored one is definitely a big one. Like, it's so, people just don't like to be ignored. Like, I usually give the example of just being a parent, and when your kid is calling you, they're like, mom, mom, mom. They don't stop until you answer them. And adults are pretty much the same. The only difference is if they call you once or twice and they realize you aren't responding, they're probably going to stop, and they're probably not going to re-engage you again, because now their brain has been conditioned to, okay, this person clearly doesn't respond when I'm trying to get their attention, especially if it happens more than once. Kids have no shame, so that, they'll do it over and over until you answer. But it's clearly still a human need.
Well, yeah, but kids don't have competitive options, right? There's only one mom usually that they can maybe go to grandmom sometimes to get what they want, but,
right?
But a customer is not going to stick around. They're going to move. They're going to bolt. They're going to go to a competitor, and they are, if nothing else, even if they stay, They're going to be very upset, and you're going to have denigrated their experience, and you're going to have to basically dig yourself out of a hole to create a positive feeling again and to resolve not only the issue, but to resolve their emotional feelings towards you and your brand.
Wow. So do you think it would be good? So you mentioned that you do a lot of training. Do you think it's important for the entire organization to be exposed to emotional intelligence so that they can be better able to manage their own emotions in those experiences?
Sure. I mean, emotional intelligence, I think, sort of has a framework with it. So I don't know that it has to be that, but it has to be that idea, right? The idea of being in touch with who you are, and not only who you are, but how you relate to customers. And Be Your Customers Here, the first 3 sections, so there's 10 sections in the book, 82 chapters. The first 3 sections are really all about mindset, because that's how important it is. First section is about the mindset of the actual, customer service representative. How do we feel? So when you look at that emotional intelligence that you're asking about, I think everybody not only needs to sort of come to grips with themselves and their own triggers and their own cognitive biases and their own ways of approaching customers and customer experience, but also how they interact with each other, how they interact with the team. I mean, all of that mixes together to create sort of the perfect culture. There is no perfect culture, but those are the things you strive for in creating a great culture. Is sort of empathy across and throughout the organization, but that starts, to your point, at looking inside yourself.
That's true. So we've looked a lot about customer experience as it relates to like an organization with employees, but there are a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, mompreneurs, people who are doing online businesses, and their business is a lot of it is outsourced, and they are the primary face and image and idea of their business. If they're running a business online, they're definitely dealing with customers just like in an organization type. But the kind of customers they're dealing with are more now on a one-on-one. And a lot of times you have customers who you've never actually met because, you live in Massachusetts, I live in Jamaica, and our business is, we pay each other through PayPal and we only talk through Skype. So from a customer experience perspective, what are some considerations that persons of that category need to consider as it relates to customer experience and having a successful business?
Well, it's interesting. I went from a retail business, which I'm not in anymore, to basically a virtual business, as you've described. So I've given a lot of thought to this, not only because of coaching other people, but in my own business. And I'd say the first thing to do is the same thing I would advise FedEx to do. Seriously, it is literally the same process, just on a much smaller scale, which is map your customer journey. Sit down and look at because small businesses never do that. And like solopreneurs and people that are B2B consultant types, they rarely ever really sit down and go, okay, what is my customer journey? Where do people come in? What marketing are they seeing? Where are they finding me? Twitter, my blog, this podcast? And then what happens? What expectations is that setting? What are my response times? What's the next thing that happens? Do they go to another piece of content? And really look at the journey and look at, 1, what you think it is now, and 2, what you want it to be. What do you want your customers to experience? What do you want your response time to be? How often do you want to monitor your social channels? And how do you want to communicate with your customers? Do you want it to be omni-channel? Do you want to direct people? If you always respect the channel they came in on or they want to be on, of course. But where do you want to have your business live? Is it on Skype? Is it on email? And if you look at your journey and go through from beginning to end, every piece of your brand that a customer can possibly touch or a prospective customer touches, and then you sort of take that approach and you look at each touch point and say, how can I make this touch point great? 1, do something like the triggers. How do I make sure I don't mess it up? Then how do I make it great? And one of the concepts I teach is we do a thing called customer journey hacking. But the point of that is we break up the touch points into touch points and pressure points. Because I truly believe that none of us have enough time. If you try to focus on everything, nothing's going to get done. I mean, we all say everything's important in customer experience, and it is, but you start with the big rocks. So you look at the pressure points. You look at, okay, what are the 3 to 5 big moments when I interact with a customer, and it may be closing the sale, right? When they sign up for your program or buy your speech or whatever it may be, buy your product. It may be when there's a customer service issue. It may be when the first initial call. Look at those big pressure points first. Get those as tight and as perfect as you can get them, and then work on every touch point as much as you can.
Got you. So the pressure points and the touch points are totally important to really connecting with the customers. And regardless of how big or how small your company is, you need to really sit down and identify what you want your customer's journey to be and what you want their experience to be like.
Well, absolutely. And you've got to beware, especially in a smaller business, of shiny object syndrome. It is. I truly believe that today we are all at war with complexity and distraction. We truly are. And it's the people who can master, focus and simplicity that can not only create great businesses, but create great customer experiences, because you really do need to make sure you're focused on the big rocks. And you know what? A lot of people don't focus on the big rocks. This is one of the pitches I make when I talk about training, because training is a very big rock. It's very hard to change human behavior. It's a lot easier to change the sign or a line of, right? Or a line of computer code. And that's one of the things I say. It's like, look, I know it's hard. That's why nobody does it. That's why it's a competitive advantage if your people are trained and are great. But the same principle applies to what you're asking about, which is small businesses, is being focused on those pressure points, on those big rocks, and filtering out the noise, because there is so much noise now.
Yeah, that's so true. It's interesting that you indicated that the big rock is training, because I think when people hear that, somehow I think psychologically they just think training, oh God, I've got to go to training tomorrow. And their mind is not in a positive place where training is concerned. And I don't know if it's because of, the history of training. And so I've even had one consultant indicate to me that he doesn't even use the word training. He uses the word development because it has a different connotation in the mind versus training. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a pretty smart idea. I like that. The only catch with that is if you're selling training, people are probably searching the word on Google. So I can see both sides of that one. It's actually an interesting concept, though, and I agree with his philosophy and your philosophy as well, which is there's just been a lot of bad training. And there's been a lot of training where people they sat in a class for a day or a half day, or worse, 2 or 3 days, and everything went back to normal. And this sort of circles us back, Yannick, what's particularly harmful is when you have training and you don't have the culture to support what they learn in the training.
True.
So if you go, you bring me in and I get your team jazzed, they are ready to help customers, and they've got the skills, they're more confident now. I've told them how to handle difficult customers. I've told them communication tricks. I've helped them work on their mindset, and they go back and they go to a culture where there's just nothing but rules and policies and managers that are yelling about numbers and nobody seems to care about customers. Then you wasted your money on me.
True.
Because it won't be effective.
That is true. And you are an external party. So, after you've done all the exciting stuff and you leave, at the end of the day, they go back to whatever the existing environment or the behaviors of that environment are. And that can be even more demotivating than not going to training at all.
Well, right. If it's not a customer-centric culture, and I know it's sort of a buzzword, but it's a good buzzword. it's one that it's one that really describes something important. Because even in our training, because I don't believe in one and done. I mean, I'm not going to fix your staff in a half a day. So we've got a whole 12-week program that goes with our training. But to circle back to the earlier point, it doesn't matter if nobody's going to execute the program, or if the people who execute the program sort of don't care and are just doing it because they're checking a box. I mean, being customer centric and wanting to help customers has to be in the DNA of the organization.
True.
And I think you can make the pitch for train. A lot of times, I think that resistance you're seeing, just to add one more point, that resistance we're seeing to training is because it's not part of a whole package. It's just like, oh, customer service is down, let's get a trainer. Mm-hmm. Right? That's it.
They're not really getting the whole suite of and fitting it into something. They're trying to fit what's that saying that they say, fit a round peg into a square hole?
That's the one.
Yeah. So it's just not fitting together at all. I totally understand you. So Adam, throughout our entire conversation, you've been pumped, you've been energized, you've been enthusiastic. Can you share with our listeners how you personally stay motivated every single day?
How do I stay motivated? That's a good question. I don't really know. I just do. I mean, having goals is a big thing. So I've always been very goal oriented. I sit down and, I don't look at them as often as I should, like daily, but, I look at my goals regularly. I redo them regularly. One of the things I do is I try to stay healthy and fit. And I know that sounds sort of trite, but it makes all the difference in the world. I've actually got a treadmill desk. So,
wow.
Yeah, so a lot of times I'm not on now because, your audio quality is important. I would never do this on a podcast interview. But I'll do conference calls. I'll do all kinds of stuff. So I'm literally on the computer because there's a whole concept called sitting is the new smoking. And I'm a knowledge worker. I mean, I live and breathe on the computer, on the phone. So staying healthy really helps with the mechanics of the internal motivation. And I think finally, it's just, I love what I do. I train and teach, and I've always sort of enjoyed teaching, and I like helping people solve problems and teaching people new things. And when I could teach somebody, how to deal with customer service, and I see them struggle, I go, look, it's not easy, but some of what you're dealing with really is easy. Let me help you. And it really is rewarding. So I think that's the biggest thing is, it's a truly rewarding thing to teach people and to help people make their lives better and be more successful in their jobs.
Great. That sounds awesome. So you would definitely fall into my vision, which is to create a more caring world. So you're definitely contributing to that vision.
Well, thank you. I'm proud to be a part of it.
Now, Adam, can you share with us what's the one online resource, tool, website, or app that you absolutely cannot live without in your business?
Well, I don't know if it's a phone app that counts, right? It doesn't have to be internet or whatever.
No, it doesn't have to be.
It's got to be TripIt. Have you ever heard of TripIt?
No, that's a new one.
Okay, well, I do a good bit of traveling, speaking, workshops, and TripIt manages all your trips, and it is insanely cool. So you get your email from, Delta or American, you get your email from the hotel, you just forward it to TripIt, and it literally puts it in an itinerary with all of your codes and your confirmation numbers and the phone numbers, and it puts everything in order. So it'll do like the flight, then the hotel check-in, and then the flight, then the hotel check-out, then the flight out, put in the rental cars, and it is incredible. And it'll do alerts if your plane's running late. So instead of having to sign up with each different airline, I just send everything to TripIt, and it's alerting me all the time. And it is, if you travel, it is absolutely fantastic. It is like my favorite thing. My podcast partner, Jeannie, said she would like to marry TripIt.
Wow. Okay. All right. So I'm definitely going to check that one out. So that's TripIt. So, and I'm assuming that's available on the Apple Store as well as the Google Play Store, right?
I do not know anything except for the Apple. It is definitely available for iPhone. And there's a cheap, there's a paid one that's like, I want to say $49 US for the month, but there's a inexpensive. It's like a 99 cent or $1.99 for the basic. And that does a whole lot by itself. But a lot of people I know just have the basic.
Okay. All right, Adam, can you share with us some books that have had the biggest impact on you and just who you are? What are some of the books that your all-time classics that have really had a great impact on you?
Well, I'd have to say Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People was a big one. And it's an old book. Are you familiar with it?
Yes, I am. It's funny you said that because I have a very, very good friend who's a Sagittarius, and he actually gave me that book. So there must be, ding, 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 some connection.
It's in the stars. Oh, that's funny. Well, it is a classic. And, I wrote Be Your Customer's Hero because I wanted like a one-stop book I could hand to a frontline employee to let them know everything they need to, not everything, but like 85% to 90% of what they need to know to interact with customers. Well, I got to tell you, if I'd never written the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People would be a close second to a one-step shop, because it's all about how you interact with people and how you treat people and how you communicate with people. And it's, it's got sort of a hokey old title, and some of the stuff's in it it's a little dated, but it's amazing how relevant it still is today.
That is true.
I'll give you a more modern one, I think, just to not be stuck in the whenever that came out, the early 20th century. So there's a book called Deep Work by Cal Newport, and I think he's I want to say a computer science professor, believe it or not, at Georgetown University, and it fits in with some of the things I've said earlier in the interview about us being at war with distraction and complexity. And his thesis is essentially that today, one of the greatest things you can do, especially if you're in a knowledge field like we are, is take time to do deep work, to focus out. I was talking about getting rid of the noise, and he really dives deeply into the idea and shows people how they've done it in different models for doing it. And that idea of really having focused time, and I don't mean like an hour, I mean like true focused time to work on projects and to think and to do, create great things. And he makes a great pitch for it, and it does a great analysis, and it's sort of just confirmed for me. It was a valuable book for me because it's what I already believed intuitively. He just sort of put science and a framework behind it for me.
Right. Awesome. So I found it on Amazon, just for our listeners that didn't hear it clearly. It's Deep Work, Rules for Focused Success in a Distracted World by Cal Newport. So Adam recommends that book as a book that had a great impact on him, and as well How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. That's like the Bible of relationships, right?
Pretty much. Yep.
All right. So Adam, tell us now, what's one thing that's going on in your life right now that you're really excited about, something that you're either working on to develop yourself or develop your people?
Well, it is actually it's hitting a long-term goal or a few-year-old goal. So I've been doing workshops and speaking. I've been blogging forever, doing a podcast. And the one thing I've always wanted to do, and it just never made the cut, was to create online training, because it's truly the future. And we're getting more and more virtual every day. And I am launching my first online customer service training course this week. So it may not be this week when this podcast episode comes out, but it's this week when we're recording. And I'm so excited about it. And we've got a couple of other concepts we're working on. So we're hopefully going to have 2, maybe 3 online training courses out by the end of the year. I'm just super excited. And what's cool, I guess, because we talked about it, it's actually the first one we're releasing is based on the 7 service triggers.
Sweet. Nice. So how can our listeners get access to this?
Well, it should be on the website, hopefully by the time this goes live, but just go to customersthatstick.com and you will be able to find it everywhere, because we'll be promoting it all over the site.
Awesome. We're releasing our first online program as well, probably by maybe another 2 weeks. And the platform we're using is Thinkific. Have you ever heard of that online learning platform?
That is exactly where our course will be. We are Thinkific buddies, Yannick.
Oh,
wonderful.
Awesome.
I love it. We'll have to compare notes offline on that experience.
For sure.
Interesting.
All right. So can you tell our listeners where they can find you online? Your website, your Twitter, your Facebook, where are you online?
First is just search my name, Adam Toporek, and you'll usually get me. I'm pretty much the first page of Google for my name, Adam, Toporek. My home base is customersthatstick.com. You can always reach me through there. The major social channels, Twitter, LinkedIn, and I love connecting with new people. Let me know you heard me on Yannick's podcast, and you should be able to find me. I'm pretty easy to find. It's good and bad, right?
Yeah, that's true. But accessibility is definitely number one of the things in customer experience, because
you got it.
Customers want to know that they can connect with you. On that note, just to add a little snippet, like I found it so interesting that most websites I go to nowadays, they don't actually have a telephone number that you can get in touch with them. It's all about complete the contact form and maybe you get back an automated response. And there was one website that really astounded me. Like Zappos almost has their telephone number on all of the pages on their website. And Tony Heesh says there's a specific reason why that's there, because they're in business, so they want their customers to get in touch with them.
100%. And I think if you go back, this is so old, I'm having trouble remembering for our podcast. I believe I have an entire slide share about the user design on the Customers at Six SlideShare channel, about the user design at Zappos, and I've written about that phone number. So it's very interesting that you point that out. And it's so true. I mean, we're moving to such a digital world and so much more is mobile, but a phone number is still a hugely important thing to a lot of customers.
Yeah, so true. Okay, Adam, before we wrap up this interview, we normally ask our guests, what's one quote or saying that, you kind of go back to when you face obstacles or challenges, but it's like your little reinvigoration that you use for yourself. Do you have one of those?
Well, I have two, but one of them's way too long for the podcast, but I'll say it so people can look it up. And it's my favorite poem. It's the poem If, I-F, by Rudyard Kipling. But that would be another 10 minutes of the podcast to read that out. So check that out. But the next one, I mean, we talk about sort of like motivating yourself when you're starting to slow down a little bit. It's from our American president, Calvin Coolidge. I'll have to read it. It's a little long. Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent.
Nice. I love it. All right. So persistence is the key.
Got to keep plugging away, right, Yanni?
Yeah, you do. You really have to, because, you have to keep on reinforcing that message and just really stay present and just aware of what's going on. And, that can't be done by doing something today and then, I'm going to do it again next week. Even with your own exercise. I mean, you pointed out yourself that your physical health actually contributes to your success. And I'm sure it's not something you do maybe 3 or 4 times a month when you remember, but it's something you do every single day, right?
Well, let's not say every day, but yes, I do it consistently. Well, actually, the tread desk I probably do every day, but like real true working out, that may not be every day. I am on the road a good bit, but yeah, right. I mean, it has to be consistent. I mean, right. You can't go to the gym once a month. It doesn't work. It doesn't help. It doesn't do anything. It actually is counterproductive, right? It makes you sore.
Yeah. Very true. I can attest to that.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Persistence, you've got this podcast and it's an amazing thing. We've got a podcast too. And I know what hard work that is. And I see your persistence just starting a podcast. It's regularly scheduled. I mean, that's a big thing, Yannick, and you deserve a big hats off just for that.
Oh, gosh. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the compliment, especially coming from a veteran like yourself who has way more, experience and years under their belt than I do. But as you said before, in terms of, how you stay motivated, it's really just my passion for customer experience. I want to add more value to people's lives. And I just want to see people having better experiences, because that's why I started this business, to just create better experiences. I hate poor service. And so if I can stop complaining and be a part of the solution and actually provide solutions for people to improve, then at least I'm contributing to the better part of it.
That's a wonderful sentiment. I like that. Be part of the solution, not the problem, as we say.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Adam. I had a super great time with you on this podcast. I felt like I wasn't doing an interview. It felt like you were sitting right here in front of me, on the couch. Just, we're having a great conversation. And I'm sure those who are listening probably felt the same way too.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here, and it's a fantastic show, and enjoyed it.
Great. So, guys, if you want to follow us in our Facebook group, please head on over to Facebook and join our group. It's called Navigating the Customer Experience Facebook Community. And we have all of our past guests over there, as well as our listeners. We share lots of great information and tips in there. And we have theme days where we get to share information with each other. So please head on over to our Facebook group if you want to be more part of an in-depth conversation. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter at NavigatingCX. So thank you again, Adam.
Thank you, Yannick.
And we'll see you next time on Navigating the Customer Experience. I'm your host, Yannick Grant. We really appreciate your support of this podcast. Are you ready to grow your business even more? Or improve your leadership skills? Or train your team members in the art of customer service? Give us a call at 305 848-0815 or visit our website at www.yaniquegrant.com. That's YANIQUEGRANT.com. Remember, 305-848-0815 or visit our website at yaniquegrant.com. Our new online course, Mastering Customer Experience and Increasing Your Revenue, is now available. The link for this will be on the show notes of each episode starting September 7, 2016. The first 2 modules are free, so hop on over, have a look, and take the steps to increase your revenue.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.